And all right, over to you, Alex.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Thanks you so much for inviting me to talk about personalization. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Alex Net. I'm leading Infinitum Digital. We are based in Barcelona, and we provide consultancy and implementation services in the digital arena, mainly working with Ibexa DXP and the Quantum Group composable stack, but also with solutions like Contentful and Storyblock in the headless work. And our main markets are tourism and education. Regarding the topic of my presentation, my first idea was to talk about real cases from the trench. But Janusz convinced me to do something more abstract and general and talk about what we have learned in these nearly 3 years doing personalization projects. Things that went well, problems, barriers, challenges. To me, it was a very interesting exercise, and I would like to thank Janusz for moving me from my comfort area and make me think in a broader way. These are the takeaways that I would like to discuss with you, and I would like to have time also to discuss and talk and have also all the feedback. But in our point of view, these are the 10 takeaways that we get from 3 years working with personalization. Positioning is very important because position could really define what are your possibilities with a customer. Sometimes preconditions mark the possibilities that you have in a project. It's important to use frameworks. It's important not to consider personalization only in a point of view, on a technical point of view. Risk analysis is key in order to understand what are the things that you have to take in account on a project, and also stakeholders in order to understand to whom you are working and what are the possibilities of collaboration with them. Also, if your team is really ready for a complex project like personalization, all the things related to the technical stack in personalization that is getting more and more complex. The importance of creating scenarios, the personalization scenarios, the importance of defining success and create midterm plan project in order to guide you and your customer. It's important to underline that in terms of context, there's a problem in the market because personalization, normally when digital agencies come to the market, they go to the vendors. And vendors are providing technology, but technology is not enough. Technology is a part important of personalization, but the important thing here is that personalization must help you to remove friction in the visitor journey. Personalization must help you to reduce infoxication. Information overload leads to anxiety and abandonment, and achieve goals, getting things done. Customers comes to your site or to your digital project to achieve specific goals. And the easier we make it from them, the more likely they will come back. So at the end, you have to generate links, and relevance leads to strengthen the bonds with your customers. The first takeaway is that positioning, the classical term in marketing, positioning, is key in order to understand what are your possibilities with a customer. Why? Because established positioning in your existing customer base could be a barrier to get a personalization project. Let me put you an example. If you are recognized in a market as an experimented CMS implementator with serious delivery, that could limit you and your company to get a project. It is crucial to be perceived as a personalization enabler in the mind of the decision makers. And sometimes, if the position in your existing customer base is not created, you could have problems in order to enter in personalization projects. So It's important to assess your positioning, and it's important that your company is perceived in the mind of decision makers as a personalization enable. And all these things can limit or amplify your chances to enter in personalization projects. The other important thing is also to check preconditions. It's important to recognize that sometimes it's better not to enter in personalization with customers because personalizations are not in place. Here, for example, you have a classical graph of our process that we work with the customers with UX, UI projects. And if personalization is about removing friction in the visitor's journeys, and you don't know exactly what are your personas, nor journeys, the information architecture is fuzzy, and then the content tree is not clear for the things that you are doing, it's better to stay and fix these preconditions, not to enter in personalization projects. This is important because sometimes you want to enter, and at the end, when you start working with projects that they don't have the preconditions, the key things to success could be really limited and could damage your project. So preconditions are important. If you don't have user personas, user journey maps, and a clear information architecture, our advice is not to enter in personalization and fix and do the homework. Also, frameworks are important. And the important takeaway here is that if you cannot go to the vendors and say, show me your tools, we need to personalize. I remember 3 years ago when we have the first talk with vendors that we feel really, really lost because we need a methodological approach and not really a tech solution. For us, Nintel, that I think that Andy is with us today, and I'm really pleased to have Andy here. It was a really a clear company in order to guide us because even that they are working in the tech stack of the composable projects in personalization, they have a clear methodological approach, and we have been using a lot his methodology in order to understand and cope with the projects. Here we have the personalization maturity model that it's interesting for us to assess more or less where we are with the customer. Why? Because as we go higher in the pyramid, the things are getting more complicated. Initially, we start with an initial state that we don't have personalization, then we can create some rules in order to create personalization. Then when we have personas in place, we can start one to some personalization, and then all the things related to AI and hyper-personalization and hyper-targetization start to get complicated. And it's important to understand what is when we start with a customer, what is the level and how can we tackle with a different approach that we have. Also, in the methodological framework that you use, we distinguish clearly all the actions, and the tech stack that must support personalization. In actions, as I've been talking, reports on AI, content tree must be really clear. UX modeling, personas and user journey must be clear. It's important to identify all the data repositories that would work with personalization, because with personalization, we need data to work, and how to analyze it, and of course, define the objective KPIs and the personalization models that we are going to use, and at the end, personalize the content and create a strategy in place. And of course, define what is the tech stack that would support the personalization strategy that we have. Nintel that these last days is using this slide that I like it very much, that considering personalization is a loop. So at the end, you need a personalization strategy to embed the most proven content variations. Then you have to analyze and create and use data in order to understand behaviors and experiments, and then create all the content variants, and then experiment, and then iterate in this loop in order to improve and consider personalization as a never-ending loop. I like it very much, this approach. The other thing that is also important is to do risk analysis. Why? Because personalization could be a double sword project. You can go to heaven or you can get fired if things does not go well. Sometimes is a tricky thing, and you have to be sure that you have the ingredients to succeed. In this risk analysis, you have to ask yourself if you have enough internal support, if you are not entering in a cosmetic project led by the general manager. You have to have a clear control of the entire tech stack in order to succeed in the project. You have to ask yourself if you have the collaboration from the different providers in the project. And also, if you have, for example, all the appropriate profiles in order to enter in the project. So my big advice is to do a risk analysis and see if you are missing something and then try to complete that. Because as I've been mentioning, could be a double short project. In personalization, knowing your stakeholders is also key. And I strongly recommend you to do a stakeholder analysis prior to entering the personalization project. We need to understand what is the position of the top management in a personalization project. Is a project that the top management is pushing? For example, is the tech department following a little bit the AI hype, and they are not really interested in the project, but also in saying that they are in a AI project? Are they going serious with the project? The other problem that we have is that for marketers, this moment is very complicated. These guys are really overwhelmed. For many reasons, digital touchpoints are increasing, and kind of media that they have to manage are increasing. The content update model is also increasing. The kind of medias that they have to manage, the tools that require to stay competitive are exploding. Sometimes we see people that is using a tech stack with 10 different solutions in the overall tech stack. So how can these guys with this overload can tackle personalization projects? Sometimes we see that there's a willingness to enter in personalization, but the real problem is that they don't have the real time to enter, and they are mainly expending time with low-profile tasks that they cannot free for going for personalization projects. So the stakeholders are important. And as the stakeholders are important, also is key to see if you have the people to fulfill a complete personalization project. Now a personalization project is a complex matter. Here you have an example of how we are managing a project in the IBEXA and Quantum Group tech stack. You need most likely a DXP to generate all the personalization part, using a customer data platform in order to create segments, and using a customer activation platform in order to activate all this information in the multi-channel world. So do you really have profiles that are prepared to work in the different areas? This is a thing that you have to really assess. And also, it's very important to verify the tech stack. This is more or less a classical setup for an Adobe project. And as we see, there's a lot of different parts. All the vendors are buying different parts of the stack with different technologies inside, and orchestration is key. Orchestration is not easy, and verifying that you have all the parts really well orchestrated and having the ability to create a project that could put in place all the different parts of the tech stack is a thing that you have to assess also. Scenarios. The scenarios are very important, and it's a kind of model that you can create in order to prove that you can, at the end, create something that could work with your and could work for personalization in your personas or in your targets. And at the end, it's about creating different steps. First, you have to define the hypothesis and methodology that are useful in order to provide added value using personalization. You have to define what are the personalization signals, what components are you going to use, and what are the trigger mechanism that would put in place personalization. Also, establish the ideal routes to enhance the experience, because as we have talked, it's about enhancing experience. And at the end, using the data repositories and the tech stack in order to put it in place. So to put it more in an example, here you have an example of a project that we did with in the tourism area, wellness. Here, for example, for this scenario, we use user data. This user is entering in the home page and is choosing a personalization signal that is wellness. And then, so we are able to put this person in a segment that is called wellness. And of course, all the tracking actions are activated. What we want to do, we want to simplify the access to the more relevant content and create something that could be easy for them in order to organize the trip. And we want to really offer the more relevant offering that we have in the portal. So the idea is that when this guy enters in the hotel page, we can use the explicit personalization information that we have in order to show only the hotels that comes from a spa. And we can create, for example, recommendations using implicit personalization and putting in place the algorithms in order to recommend in the blog wellness, using the popularity model, what are the treatments that frequently are consumed together. So in this case, we are using the triggering mechanism in order to put this guy in the segment wellness, and then we are using different components in order to create filtering personalization models in order to provide only the hotels with a spa and treatments that are more popular at wellness. This is more or less an example of personalization scenarios. At the end, it's also very important to define success. This is an example of a project that, for me, with Actito was really well defined what they want to accomplish with the personalization. But at the end, if you are not able to define success with your customer, you cannot be guided. You cannot guide your team in order to create a good project. But at the end, you cannot create a full commitment with your customer in order to define common goals with your customers, or defining success is key. And at the end, I strongly also recommend to create a roadmap on personalization. And this is an example, but the idea is that in the long term, you have to be able to create a roadmap in personalization in order to show how are you going deeper in personalization and going in these more hyper automatization models that are not easy to cope, and you can start doing simple things and then going step by step, creating a more complex project. At the end, personalization is a loop. You have to rebuild, you have to iterate, and it's a continuous learning and experimentation process. So thank you so much. Here you have the 10 takeaways, and I hope that we can have time to discuss a little bit about it. Janusz.
Thank you, Alex. Well done. I know I challenged you to change it all and go a little bit quicker. So we have time for Q&A. Why don't we start in Prague with my friend Adam?
Hello, nice to meet you, Alex. Thanks for the presentation. I really like some of the summaries that you have shown. I would like to touch a topic that you didn't mention explicitly, and that's the timelines. So on one hand, we all know that personalization is about experimenting. On the other hand, there is a time that you need to allow for a particular attempt to find out whether or not it works. So I'm wondering, with your thoughts, with your approach on this, what's the minimum time frame that is needed for a particular approach to verify whether or not this is a reasonable way forward?
Well, I suppose that Andy can add a lot of knowledge here, but our advice here, you are right that perhaps I missed this part of timeline, but our advice and the things that we are doing right now is to try to work in an agile mode and putting a bunch of personalization scenarios that are discussed with the customer. And then when we have information, clear information, what's happening in these personalization scenarios, and we have conclusions, then we redefine this, or we go to new personalization scenarios. I don't know what you think about it, Andy.
Yeah, so very, very similar. I think in our case, what we always speaking with our partners and customers, it's really about the time to value. So sometimes it's not about doing everything in, let's say it in a couple of weeks or a couple of months. It's really about having a very clear goal, what's the value you want to get, and how much time do you take to get that value. And there we place, for example, this iterations. It's really about velocity. And I think also, as Alex has said, this is, of course, technology enables all this, but it's not about technology. It's really about having the integration of the technology very, very fast. And that's why we are also from our technology perspective, composable. That's an important part to have running everything from day one, let's say it, and then really work on understanding, on working with the tools to have the time to value as soon as possible. And we have seen customers getting the first time to value after 3 weeks, another where it takes 2 months. But usually, and that's something we're so very, very proud. In our case, after 1 year, there's always a positive ROI. And I think it's really because we make it also very, very easy to work with the tool. And that's the most important part.
Thank you, Andy. My friend Justin in Toronto asked about tracking. Do you want to briefly elaborate, Justin?
Sure, and I apologize for being camera off yet again. I'm still on a train. 2 weeks later, I'm still on a train.
I love it.
Yeah, just I wanted to know about attribution and actually, Andy, you just mentioned ROI. The serving of different content variations per, say, segment or visitor, are you tracking those through to conversion, through CRM pipeline? How does that work after the content's been served?
In our last projects, we are using a CDP. A customer data platform is an ideal platform in order to gather all the different sources of information. And at the other side, you have a fantastic way to create segments that could be defined on the fly. So this is more or less how we are approaching that.
All right. Very good.
And just maybe a little bit further, how are you proving ROI? That's my big. So we're saying we've implemented personalization. We're now serving custom content to your segments. How am I proving that has, resulted in an X% increase in conversion rates, in revenue? Where are you establishing that?
Proving that is not easy, and it depends also on the objectives of the customer. When you have a clear e-commerce project where conversion is clear and everybody agrees that conversion is king, it's easy. But for example, when you are in a project, for example, like tourism, that you don't have clear conversion monetary objectives, you have to go for more qualitative things. For example, is personalization helping me to have wiser information of our customers in order to provide better information? Is personalization helping me to provide returning visitors to the country? Is this is the things that we are trying to measure in a project where a conversion is not as clear as in e-commerce.
Very good. In the chat, I asked if there was anything missing or any additional points. We're coming up towards the end. Alex, you managed to go through all 10 and even take a little bit of a Q&A. So thank you for that. In the chat now, I'm seeing Jeffrey, our member from the Netherlands, sharing more on ROI. Christina asked, what about when personalization goes wrong? How to know if the tone is not correct? Do you have any insights there, Alex?
Well, I think that for this reason, it's very important to have clear objectives fixed with your customer. You have to educate your customer in order to understand that personalization, as it has been mentioned, it is an experimental project at the beginning. And you have to prepare your customer in order to enter in this experimentation process. But at the end, the KPIs that you are fixing, it's important that they can match, because if not, you have a problem. And that's all. I mean, at the end, you can iterate and you can try to fix things, and if you can prove that you are improving with the iteration, you are in a good way in order to improve the relationship when things are going bad. But sometimes it's not easy.
Last but not least, it's almost a yes or no question. Thomas is asking, if you look outside e-commerce, e.g. in government or higher education where you also work, is there, in your view, a huge value in personalization?
Totally. No doubt about it.
Yes. All right. And that's all we had, folks. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you once again, Alex. Really appreciate it. You did it.
Pleasure.
I'll do my best to write up the notes from the Q&A as well.